Welcome, everybody. Just to continue with what Matt was saying, I've been in cybersecurity since 2008, and it has continually evolved over the years. And I'm really glad you're here today. Want to make your session as valuable as possible. Want to make this a little interactive for you so that at least if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Make sure that you leave here with the answers that you come here with. I'm sure you have a few, but let's get started. I'll show you and go over what we're going to cover today. So we'll just go over the basics of cybersecurity. I'll talk about why we're in this access crisis in the last year and a half and ongoing. I'll talk about the threat landscape. I'll talk about AI and how it's impacting you and your workplace. And then we'll talk about some best practices for you to take away. But to get started for today's session, I just want Matt to put up a poll. And I just want to ask you, for each of you here today, what professional AI tools do you use every week? I mean, there's a plethora of them to choose from, but your workplace may have set up the enterprise model of an AI, generative AI. And I'm just wondering, out of the generative AI ones, which one do you use? So just fill out the poll, and then that'll kind of help me understand what tools you're using, and then that I can tackle that going forward. So it'll make it a little bit more personalized for you. Okay, Copilot, awesome. And I mean, everyone usually is using some form of AI, so that's why I ask, but professionally, it's not always the same. So it just depends on what licenses you have. So in any case, Gemini, okay. Matt, I don't know if you were able to share a chat.
I've got I think that some of the responses here.
Okay, sorry, I can't see the poll, so that's why. So
okay, there we go. I can read them out.
Okay, if you have majority of the responses, go ahead.
Yeah, I got 7 so far. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 Copilots.
Okay.
So one ChatGPT, and then this person actually is using Copilot, and they also have document management system. They have a document management system that has AI integrated within it.
And
then we have one person who's using Claude, ChatGPT, and Copilot.
Okay.
All the big hitters awesome. There.
Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you for answering that. Okay, so to dive in for today, I kind of want to give you an overview of what kind of frame, like kind of a mindset I need you to kind of see from a cybersecurity perspective. So it's a little bit convoluted. People get somewhat confused as to like all of the information that's being put out there. What should you focus on? What should you care about? What matters? What doesn't matter? And then there's just too much information in terms of like, what should you do and how do you do it? And what is there to know? And sometimes it's pretty technical as well. I won't deny that. And we live in a world where, in cybersecurity anyway, where we abbreviate everything so that if you even try to understand it, you're going to be like, well, what does that mean? Because that's abbreviated and that's abbreviated. So you're going to see different headlines out there, and maybe you have over the last couple of years, and some of them don't make sense and maybe some of them do. But I want to break down this so that you can put on the hat where you're looking at it from the personal perspective and from the professional perspective, because to me, they both intertwine in your day-to-day life anyway. So whatever I cover with you today, it really does pertain to your personal life as well, okay? So put on that hat with that lens and keep that in mind when I'm talking to you about this, okay? So first of all, I want to clarify, you are the target. So when it comes to hackers, cyber criminals, there's a whole different type of realm of cyber criminals. But at the end of the day, they're going to exploit trust and technology and emotion to craft scams that are going to evolve faster than you or our companies, any company we work with, can keep up with. Okay. So they're looking at you as an individual. So you may not have known that. You may have thought, well, they're targeting big companies or they're targeting these kind of companies. And again, it may not be very clear to you how they're kind of determining their method of madness. So I want to first of all start with it being you, because that is actually how it does start. So regardless of any breach you've heard about, any cyber attack you've read about, it always has started with an individual target in mind, okay? So there's different types and tactics, and I won't go into those technical methods with you today, but let's break down kind of what they want. Okay, so right now they are looking at targeting confidential data. So that is where we are interacting on the premise of doing our work every day. And we're just, whatever you are, an accountant, HR manager, project manager, or your administrator, doesn't matter what field you're in, doesn't matter what company you're working for, doesn't matter what sector, small, medium, or large as well. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're handling confidential data, and that is a high value target. Now, what is confidential data? So under the privacy laws, like in Canada, for example, we call it PII. So privacy law is personally identifiable information. So I was just wondering if you could help me by taking a couple seconds and just Googling for me, what is PII? And then once you answer it, he has his poll here. Please just put in the answer you found so that you can clarify to me what it is and give me an example. Your organization handles this PII every day. And based on the role that you have in the company, you might be handling it all day long. And also you might be handling it every day, all day long, or even just sometimes. But at the end of the day, I would gather that everyone in this session is handling some form of PII, personally identifiable information. And we're going to dive into that today once we're on the same page as understanding what that is. Because you're a target, you're handling PII, what is it that you're going to be a target for? And so once we figure out what is that, then we can break down what happens with that. Okay? Okay. So why don't we just push some of the answers out now, Matt? Go ahead and start saying them, and then we'll just discuss it.
Yeah, I can do that. So we have a nice long definition here. Personally identifiable information is any data that can directly or indirectly identify, contact, or locate a specific individual. It is highly sensitive information such as names, social security numbers, biometric records, or financial details that must be protected from breaches to prevent identity theft and fraud. It's longer, but I'm going to cut it off there. Personally identifiable information. Personally identifiable information, any data that can uniquely identify, contact, or locate a specific individual, such as social security numbers, biometric records, full names, or email addresses.
Yeah.
And PII is any information connected to a specific individual that can be used to uncover or steal that individual's identity. Example is SIN number.
Awesome. Okay, and so perfect. Exactly. Now, what we aren't aware of is how many items are PII. So you mentioned a few of them, but there's way more than that. So for example, your IP address, where you're actually logging in right now, like let's say you're working from home, that is your PII. Your online username is your PII. Any of your credentials is your PII. So it really does extend to more than just your physical financial records, educational records, health records, and anything you touch and see and use in real life. It's also everything online that you actually interface with as well. So at the end of the day, that's a long list of data, and it's pretty elaborate when you think about that. Falls under PII, which is under the privacy laws of what each company has to protect by law. And that means every day you're touching that one form or another. So think for a second how many of those items you're touching in terms of data every day. So we call that a data point, right? So if you're just talking about SIN numbers, that's one data point. That's like one confidential record. So think about all the points of PII that you're actually touching, whether you're looking at it, accessing it, logging in, making edits, changes, sharing, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what your role is. You can see now that at some point in time in your day, you're interfacing with PII. And so what that means is you're basically handling confidential data, which is a company's crown jewels, we call them. So crown jewels means it's the most valuable data, and that data is what hackers want. So they want all of that confidential data, and they want to get it in their little dirty paws. So this is an image of one of these famous ransomware gangs called Lockbit. They were the ransomware gang that attacked and shut down London Drugs last year. So they shut down London Drugs for over 10 days, literally shut their stores down because the cyber breach was so elaborate. London Drugs could no longer operate and had to figure out how that was occurring. So this Dimitri guy is actually the leader of this ransomware gang, and he actually isn't caught. The interesting thing behind ransomware gangs is they're not necessarily identifiable. They have such a secret footprint, digital footprint, they're hard to find, but the federal agencies were able to determine his identity. And now there's a wanted, he's on a FBI wanted list to be able to find him. So he has successfully stolen confidential data from numerous companies, you name it. Now, every ransomware gang has a different specialization, whether they target healthcare, whether they target small organizations like, libraries, or whether they target academia, you name it. Not every ransomware gang is targeting the same type of company and the same size of company. So that's why it's now pretty common knowledge that ransomware gangs or hackers of any kind of skill set now have kind of free reign to the whole marketplace out there globally. There's no barrier, there's no limit, there's no wall that stops them. These ransomware gangs are from Russia. Conti has been a huge ransomware gang in the past. They're Russian as well. There's from China. They're from all sorts of countries. So they're not necessarily having any border to stop them from targeting you and your organization. What their job is to go, we're going to seek, hunt, and find confidential data. So then once they do it, they're going to try to steal it from you one way or another. And then they're going to try and sell it. So a breach is when they access unauthorized access to the data in your company. And then when they sell it, they're going to put it on the dark web. They're possibly going to have a possible, let's say we call it ransomware for a reason, because then they're just essentially kidnapping it. So you no longer have access to it. So then you're stuck without able to access your systems, and they are hanging onto your data saying, pay us money or else we will not give you back your data and we'll sell it. So that's what happened with London Drugs. They had to negotiate with this ransomware gang saying, we'll not pay you 25 million. We could possibly pay you 8 million. And the ransomware gang said, nope, we are not going to take 8 million. We want 25 million. So the negotiators had to basically figure out a way to be able to get the data back. So if you ever want to look up the London Drugs breach, you can see kind of how that played out. And again, it takes quite a long time for it to play out because the sophisticated breaches like a ransomware gang like Lockbit really wreak havoc on an organization, especially because London Drugs is Canada-wide and their network is pretty elaborate. So it doesn't necessarily just stop at one store, one computer, one network, none of that. It's actually quite elaborate and shuts down every network, every computer, every end user. And so, regardless of the size of your company, you actually have the same issue. You're up against the same challenge every company out there is, even as small as you are. And what that is we have an access crisis. Hackers know that if they can get to any part of your identity, they have access to whatever you have access to. That means they can get into the computer that you're getting into. That means they can get into the company that you're working with. And then that means whatever software you're working for and with in that company, that means they can get access to that, which means they get access to that data, which is PII. And then that means they can then retrieve it because they have the access you have. And then they retrieve it any which way they want. And then they have unauthorized access to do with it whatever they want, and take it out of your hands without you even knowing. They've retrieved your confidential data and now are going to cause harm with that confidential data. And this is the same in your personal life, right? There's no different. It's happening all over in terms of every different aspect of those layers, and no one's actually immune to this. It's really amazing how kind of elaborate they are for their skills and abilities. I mean, these are their full-time jobs. This is what they do for a living. They know how to make millions of dollars doing this, so they're not going to stop doing this. And it continually evolves and evolves because it's fruitful for them, because they aren't getting caught like your average bank robber would have gotten caught back in the day. Not including like a Bonnie and Clyde, but Bonnie and Clyde did get caught too, if you recall. So when we look at the threat landscape, Canada is an appealing target for data breaches because it's driven by a combination of factors that we have in our various different sectors. And basically, we're vulnerable, right? We're vulnerable to cyber criminals because they want to target our PAI, and we're not securing our systems to be able to prevent them from doing so. We're not securing our individual staff members, our network, and we're not following some kind of basic cyber hygiene in order to keep them out of the front door, so to speak, right? So, we're looking at 53% of the comprised data globally is basically, that's customer PII that's the most targeted. So we have to think about our customer and maybe put on that hat as well. If you're a consumer like you are as well, and you're out there, you're buying products and you're giving your data to companies, how are they protecting it? Well, you can look at the other way. How are you protecting your company's customer data and protecting them from harm's way as well? So what we know for certain is you're about to be conned. And 80% of new account fraud involves synthetic identities in 2025. And so that just means, like, for example, a cyber criminal opens up a brand new account with a bank card, a credit card, and with the intention of using it later, right? Running up debt, laundering money, committing other crimes, for example. And so this is information that we want to somewhat put to an end, right? But we can't, because enough, right? Because these synthetic identities often bypass credit checks, and they have set it up so that they can basically trick the systems to set this up. And it's really basically a classic identity identity theft. So we're looking at, they're targeting you, they're targeting PII, and that PII is going to turn into being able to have your specific identity credentials that they could use to be able to use for, again, causing harm. Now, what we do know is phishing is here to stay without a question, and it is evolving. So, for example, you hire a new employee. They're going to be a target within 3 weeks of starting in that company, guaranteed. So we have to protect our staff because, one, they're not going to know they're a target until they are targeted. And two, you're a target because you're working in a company that could possibly have you're a target because you're actually an employee working inside of you're working on devices, you're working on a laptop, you're working on software. So your world is digital. It's no longer paper and pen. So they're coming in and they're targeting you through various different means. The most common mean is sending you malicious links via email. So they want to send you an email that looks like it's from an authentic sender, and they're going to ask you to do something, and it's going to include malicious links. Sometimes we can detect it. Sometimes we can't. Software, like technology that we hire and use for stopping our spam, doesn't necessarily stop it. Our eyes can't detect it usually. So we kind of have some, kind of marketing campaigns out there to help you understand that now, like, email is a main target for you to basically con you. It's one of the main methods. So what can we do about that? How do we know? So I just want you to look at this one. Now, the question is, if you receive this email right now, what would you do first and why? So let's talk about this. Matt will put up the question. You answer it once you look at this, and just tell me, what would you do first? Now, this may be obvious, and that's great, but I want to talk about why we have to be able to follow certain diligence in terms of looking at our email and working with our email. So I'll give you a second to look at that and put in your answer. There's no wrong answer, by the way. There's no way you're expected to be an expert on this, but let's walk through it so that we can be a little bit more knowledgeable and equipped to be able to see what we need to see in our digital correspondence.
Got a couple answers here.
Okay.
First one is look at the email domain. Maybe that means investigate it a little more. Nothing.
What?
Check the email. Sorry?
Go ahead. Next one.
Oh, yeah. Check the email address and domain. Delete it and block the sender. Verify sender. Check the sender email address. Check the sender. A lot of check the domain, check the email sender.
Okay. Awesome.
Those are all of them.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So a couple of things here. So the red flags that are really the top, I would say the top three. So one, I would like you to start thinking critically when you receive any digital communication. I mean, via text, via email, via any IM in the world. Doesn't matter what software you're on, what app you're on, any incoming message, I want you to go, how do I know this is real? Okay. So of course, yes, look at the email. Okay. And when you look at this, first of all, it just doesn't even make sense either, because if it's let's just say if it's from a company, the email address doesn't align with it being an HR department analyst. Okay. So that doesn't add up. So that's where you just go, okay, that's fishy. That should be your indication right there, stop and delete it. Because you in a company, if you look at the way you correspond to each other and receive other correspondence from outside vendors, the name is usually inside of their email, right? And then secondly, HR department analyst. Maybe in your company, if you think about your HR department, does it literally come as a title HR department analyst? Or is it a signature block with the person's name, their position, their email, their phone number, and your company logo, right? So just looking at the signing off of an email is also questionable for you. So always look at that, right? And then lastly, this link is always going to be in question. Whenever you receive a link from any possible communication, double check that. And all you have to do is hover over it. So even though it's a full link, sometimes the links come in with the title statement or whatever. It doesn't. So for example, if you look at this one just says review recent activity. So it's a hyperlink inside of that title, right? So that's suspicious because you're like, well, I didn't do anything wrong here. Why am I getting this email? They want you to click on that link. That's where you go, no, I don't have any unusual activity happening. You could scour through this email if you want, or what you can do is you can just assume it's fake because you know you didn't do anything wrong, right? Some of it's just common sense. But when you hover over that link, it'll basically tell you the URL of that link. But more importantly, if you know you don't usually get this kind of correspondence from a colleague, you just delete it. Just delete it right away. And that's all you have to do, okay? Because sometimes people aren't sure, like, well, will something happen if I open it? No, never. It's actually if you take action in this email. So if you click that link, that's going to be where the malware sits, and that's going to spread inside of your organization's network, okay? Because again, that's where the virus sits, is in that link. They've programmed it to be a malicious link for that reason. So it can come in via text, come in via IM, or any other correspondence. So once you know that's fake, you just delete it. Okay. And you're going to be bombarded because you're going to get those coming in from legitimate organizations that you are using. So when that does happen, just call them or send a separate separate communication with them and saying, did you ask me to fill out a survey? And they go, no, we didn't. And then you're confirmed as well, just to delete it. Now, the thing is what we know is attackers just don't break in anymore. They log in. Right? So this credential theft is an issue because what we have here is our credentials are so easily accessible, right? Because we have 1 in 6 breaches in 2025 that involved attackers using AI crafted phishing. So they're real, they look legitimate, they got nice logos, perfectly crafted, no grammar errors. It's exactly how your boss would send you the email, for example. And then the password is compromised and the login is compromised, and they've logged into the system with someone else's credentials. So, and then 44% of our breaches in 2025, they involve ransomware, where they're actually logging in via an email like that, and they're shutting down your system because they have locked down your data and stolen it. Also, the messages didn't come by email, and that's the point. So what's happening is these emerging, we call it attack vectors. It means they're targeting SMS, like your text. They're targeting collaboration platforms like Teams. They're targeting voice calls, which you've noticed if you've gotten phone calls, voicemails, and they're just bypassing a lot of the email security by trying these other means of targeting you. These are social engineering tactics that are getting more and more elaborate because they're impersonating staff, and they're just improving because they are figuring out how to do this. So these detection challenges are real for leaders, organizations, government, and countries, because these scams are going to happen outside of email, and they're going to be outside of traditional methods and use realistic methods that we use every day, and that we're going to start going, how do we know if that's real? How do we know that's not? And we can't detect because your company can't control all, let's say spam filter if you're getting texts and you have a company issued device, for example, or you're using your own device and using some company issued software on it. Like, there's just too many ways in which it can just avoid this system protection that your company is implementing, if they're implementing it the way that they need to, right? And it's still not 100% secure either way. So, for example, CIRO, Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization, they had a breach in 2025, and that originated from a sophisticated phishing attack. And so what happened there was it was unauthorized access, and they got into CIRO systems without permission, and they copied some of CIRO's data. And so they copied their regulatory work and their market surveillance records, that's their job, right? They're basically a regulatory organization for financial firms, right? Basically impacted 75,000 Canadians. So, they're basically still navigating this, and they're giving updates to their clients. Whether you were impacted and got correspondence from them or not, I don't know. But when we looked at what PII was, the information that was impacted was names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, dates of birth, annual income, SIN numbers, passport details, investment accounts, account statements, and all. Like, that's a lot of data. So if you were in one of those categories, that means your personal data was compromised. That means your personal identity was compromised. So they are still investigating. They spent, I think it was like 9,000 hours in investigating that breach. And they have sent out correspondence to say, okay, well, nothing has been sold on the dark web so far. So you guys are okay, which I don't know if I believe that. You will get 2 years of dark web monitoring from us just to make sure your identity is not compromised. So they're going to continue to monitor that because they realize it isn't necessarily an end date in mind when it comes to what hackers will do with that data, right? So for Xero, they're going to be under some serious scrutiny going forward. They are going to have to increase their cybersecurity controls. That's going to be mandatory. They're going to have possible class action lawsuit because of the releasing of personal data of clients, and any personal data that gets released and can cause harm, that's it's the individual's right to sue or do a class action lawsuit because of that. And then they're estimating this breach is going to cost them about $100 million. So you can see that they probably didn't realize they weren't as prepared, or maybe they were prepared and it's still going to cost them this much money. And the reputational harm is, well, untold. You can't even speak to the reputational harm in terms of clients and client trust, customer trust, industry trust, right? It breaks that down. So I just want to show you another thing here, another example of a different type of a breach or an attack. So that's just an example of smishing. And you can see that the consequences of engaging with unexpected texts or calls, they can really be pretty severe in terms of the response to you just clicking on a link or even responding to these individuals or taking the phone calls. You leave yourself really vulnerable to be interacting with these type of criminals because their main goal is to steal something from you. And so when you may not be expecting it, they're catching you when you least expect it. But you get that call from Amazon saying you're having some problems with your Amazon account, or your Visa payment didn't go through, please call us. All of these things are going to trigger an emotion that's going to make you go, oh no, I did something wrong. And you're going to think you have to act on it. That is what they're doing. That is their ploy each and every time. Whatever it is for emotion is not always the same. It could be fear, it could be urgency, it could be a sense of like, well, you did something wrong. But either way, at the end of the day, you are going to be manipulated with different methods of communication to prompt you to act on behalf of them, to make you do something for them. So I just want you to step back and look at that. And all it takes is you to just be a little bit more cautious, look at that incoming correspondence and go, I don't think that's true. I'm going to go verify. I'm going to go look elsewhere to see if that's true. I got a text from my investment firm just a few days ago. And I'm like, I don't know if they text me. They've never texted me before. Not going to deal with it. I deleted it. And I dealt with them directly through my app because I'm not messing with it. I don't have to respond via text to be able to close out that issue. I can go right directly through my app, call them, and deal with them directly in the way that I feel comfortable. And it's on my time, not on their time. And it's not urgent on their time. It's urgent if I decide it's urgent. And right now we're willing to do things because we think the digital communication is real and it's something we have to act on because we're so caught up in the fact that everything in our life is digital. It must be someone real on the other end. And now I want you to leave the session and go, it's not real. And what I want you to see here is AI is completely showing us how quickly we are moving into the fake world. We have deep fake images, we have deep fake videos, we have deep fake information, and this is only growing by the day. AI generators like who are making pictures are proud of it. They're making fake music. They're proud of it. This is now a new artistic release of being able to make a beautiful picture or a beautiful image of someone and make you think it's real, or a video or anything. So we're now at this point in time where we know for a fact this is what we're up against. We can't tell what is real and what is not. That's also a fact. And there's nothing we can do to stop that. There's no way we can stop that. So that means audio can also be copied to be real. And that means any text, any video that you're going to get from, let's say, family members or anyone could possibly be compromised. I know it's a little bit much to think about because then you think, well, what do we do? What is that about? How do we stop that? How do we navigate that? And when we're looking at these risks, there's benefits and there's risks. And we already are seeing the benefits. We're able to do our work really efficiently. We're able to use some support from AI to be able to, be our assistant per se when we're working on some certain projects. But when we look on the other end, I just want to show you some of the other end so that you can be well informed and then take that going forward so you can know what to do with it. Because it's not that you will never use that AI and you should use it, and you shouldn't balk at these AI creations of images and videos. We're going to embrace it. We have no choice. This is the way it is. But embrace it with knowledge and embrace it with somewhat kind of a sense of caution, so you do what's right when you need to. So when you're using these AI tools at work, first of all, make sure you're using the ones that you're allowed to use and only the ones you're allowed to use, because then that means your company is following the security protocols to be able to protect your company data. If you're not using your company approved tools, that's where you're going to be at risk, because that isn't a protected generative AI tool. So they say 60 to 75% of North American office workers are using tools that work without permission. That's going to change quickly because companies are going to be forced to be able to adapt and add it to their kind of tech stack. But this is impacting every organization in every sector, right? So it's either adapt or else you're going to fall off kind of fall out and become like Blockbuster, and be like no longer be a video store. So we will adapt. And for you to adapt, you have to be able to understand what you're adapting to. So have you heard of shadow AI? So it's the unsanctioned use of AI tools. So it means, you're taking a health records of a client and you need to revise it and update it, but you're not sure how to do it. So you need some help with AI. So you insert it into, let's say, ChatGPT, spin it out, say, do this, please add this, please fix this. And then you ask it to do the work for you. And yet it's not a sanctioned AI tool from your company. And you just gave it all of that confidential data to AI that has no security measures around it. You pretty much just went and posted it on your light post on the city street, because it's now gone forever and it's into the abyss of AI and used for public records or public use or anything it wants to, because AI is definitely this data collector, right? It wants to collect all the data so it can use it for future use, right? So it's really important to review all of your tools you're using, and then also the third-party usages that you're using for those tools. So as one of you mentioned, you're using a document and you're having AI kind of attached to that, just like Microsoft has it, right? You have Word and then Copilot's in it, so it can help you draft that letter. Same thing. So it just has to be approved by your company. Otherwise, it could be really risky. And we're finding right now about 20% of breaches are involving shadow AI. So we just have to be a bit more cautious about what we're approved for tools and what we're allowed to put inside of that AI. So basically, for your mindset for this year, you have to understand, like, you have to be accountable for the things you're touching, seeing, receiving, and accepting. And you have to be the human firewall. So we know, like, your passwords, they have to be protected. They still matter. They're not going away. Even with the elaborate ways that we're trying to manage passwords with single sign-on in one company, you still have your personal passwords, right? So you have to be aware that you can't reuse your passwords. 10 to 12 billion passwords were newly exposed in 2025. So, like, that's a lot of passwords. That means hackers are having a heyday just with passwords alone. So for password security, please make sure your company has implemented some basic password security, because 54% of employees reuse their passwords across multiple work systems. So we can't afford that in an organization. And it's a really simple thing to do. If you could set up a password policy that everyone could follow, you can use it through, we have NIST, which follows a standard that you could define how to put together secure passwords. So it's NIST 800-63B, if you aren't sure as an organization. And then get your company to implement a password manager so that everybody is using that, kind of following that cyber hygiene for each and every end user in your organization. Because that's where it starts, is using your own personal, increasing your cyber hygiene just personally inside of your organization. And secondly, MFA, that still matters too. So basically, don't enter any software without using MFA first. So make that part of your daily hygiene as well, so that anytime you're logging into your systems, you're making sure you have that enabled so that you're telling the system, yes, Microsoft, I'm logging in, it's me, and I am going to be accessing Word. So when you look at like Crystal, you could say, yep, it's me. I'll log into my Outlook, and then there's no issue, so that you don't ever have to doubt that you are accessing the systems properly and you're doing your part. And then when it comes to communication, I would just say it's fair to start being really paranoid. It's fair to be very cautious. So making sure you're using secure texting apps, like not using Facebook. So if you're a marketing coordinator and you're using Facebook, that incoming correspondence, be very cautious. That more likely is fake on so many levels. You just being careful about how you're corresponding with anybody on LinkedIn, so any social media for that matter, because it's very risky. That's where they're lurking the most, because it's the easiest way to prey on individuals. And then just follow your company communication process always and every single day. That process is in place for a reason, and ensure you follow it so that you can avoid having hackers intervene inside of those methods, because they do, and they will continue to try. And so that means however you're communicating, for example, with a vendor, and you have a certain way that you communicate with a vendor, make sure that you have verified ways that you are proving that that's the vendor you're working with and talking to. Because you're exchanging personal information, confidential information, company information, whether that's data records, financial records, invoicing, projects, project details, although those things matter. And I've seen where people have been duped by that, by them receiving communication from a vendor, and they realize it's actually, find out after the fact, it's not the real vendor. It can be so subtle, and can't ask why and you can't ask how. You just have to be able to be diligent in following those steps to go, our company process is that we follow our communication with our external vendors this way, with our internal team this way, and we only follow it this way, and we can't have anyone circumvent it and change that process, because that's where you'll become more vulnerable to hackers' schemes and tactics. Now, when it comes to AI, I'm going to give you 4 rules. So, rule number 1, just never put these into AI. Customer PII, financial or contracts, source code of any of your IP information, and internal credentials or system details. Just never do that. Rule 2, if you wouldn't email it outside of the company, don't put it in AI. Okay? Just that simple. Rule number 3, use what you have. Pick one approved AI tool and make it easy to access. One, okay? So then just say, have a message that's really simple for the whole team. Use this for work, but don't use personal AI tools for the company data. And then people will understand and follow it. We want to prefer tools that don't train on our inputs, they don't offer basic admin controls, and they have clear data handling policies. Now, it requires your admin to know that and to be able to do a bit due diligence to be able to make sure they know what they're doing. Gemini, for those who use Gemini, I would do some due diligence now and double check what Gemini is doing, because they just released an update of how they're now collecting all the data from all of the Google apps that you use. Whether that is something your company approves of and can handle, that's up to you. But that AI is changing every week in terms of what they can do and what they will do in terms of data scraping. You as a company have to be very diligent to go, do we want that? And if we don't, we have to put a stop to it and turn off that. I call it data scraping, but it's data collecting basically. So they're basically going to just take all the data that your company has that you're using inside of the AI and use it for their own kind of learning tool. I mean, to continually teach AI how to use, how to be more proficient, right? Rule 4, add one additional layer of verification. Okay, so when you're doing a new account vendor setup, new onboarding for an employee, do one extra layer, okay? We're in a digital world. Everything we do is digital. Unless you're out there handshaking with that new vendor and handshaking with that new employee right away, you could be duped really quickly if you aren't careful. So do whatever it is that could be most economical, but think about it, talk about it as a team, and be proactive on this one. You may think, well, we probably don't need that. We're good. I'm telling you, please try one of these methods to add to your organization, whatever is the most effective for you and cost effective as well, not too resource heavy, but whether it's just that you get them to do a live selfie, one-time ID verification after initial approval, whatever, address or phone validation using a trusted third party, like whatever it is. But there is methods out there where you can do another layer of proof that this is a real vendor, not a bot, not a hacker, and not a scammer per se. To me, they're all under the same umbrella. Okay? And I mean, I really do encourage you to talk about this at your next board meeting, asking what it should be, especially for accounting and HR. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on this one. I'm sure you're very aware of how challenging that is. And then when it comes to Wi-Fi for your team, as we're working remotely and we're traveling for work and then we work in the office, we have ongoing challenges with using Wi-Fi. And I would just say the main cautious kind of protocol I would recommend is just don't use Wi-Fi at a Starbucks or airport, coffee shop, airport, anything like that, where you're going to use company data, logging into company software. So banking even. If you're going to do any of that, do that on your own VPN. So if you have a virtual private network, or you can even toggle your cell phone to your laptop to have that a bit more secure so it's locked. But Wi-Fi can be easily kind of hijacked, we call it, so that you could possibly be logging into the Calgary airport. So you think Calgary airport Wi-Fi, and it's actually a hacker's Wi-Fi network. So you're never going to know. So just be cautious when you're using Wi-Fi. You don't use anything confidential. You can watch YouTube videos, whatever it is you are doing for fun. But when it comes to work, just avoid Wi-Fi every time you can so that you can protect your company data. And then some key takeaways that I want to bring to your attention is that if you don't have a password manager, talk to your team and figure out which one you could implement as soon as possible. Okay, so you can take that measure to an individual level. And then secondly, take MFA to an individual level. Get everybody to enable MFA on all of their accounts. It may take you a bit of effort, but it will be worth it in the long run because it's easy for individual end users to use. It's effective, and it takes accountability to the individual user, and it helps the organization as a whole. Okay? And then anything you're working with in terms of communication, just take that 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds just to verify. Incoming text, incoming IM. Look at it. Give yourself a minute. And if you're not sure, don't respond. But then if you are sure and you think it's fake, delete it. Just do what you can so that you can be a little bit proactive when it comes to this incoming digital communication that we are being bombarded with, that we can't necessarily stop, but we have to navigate regardless. I wish it would stop, but you can't, right? It's coming in every which way. Depends on what kind of communication you're even using, right? Could be pretty overwhelming, to be honest with you. So take initiative just by giving yourself a few seconds. Then follow the AI input rules so that you're protecting your organization. And then always verify no matter what you're doing. So if you're not sure, don't hesitate to make a phone call. Your manager would appreciate that rather than you in sending a check to e-transfer to a vendor or a wire transfer to a vendor who's really not a vendor and you just paid a hacker. Okay. And then lastly, I would recommend you create a safe board with your team, whatever that could be, but in your own organization, so that if, one of your team members, so for example, like Natasha, if you get a call at 5 o'clock and you get a demanding request from somebody over the phone and you think it's your colleague, but you aren't sure, that code word comes in really handy so that you can make sure it's that colleague calling and not a hacker just using a AI voice. Okay? So you really have to protect yourself, and it's really a shame that we're talking about this, but being proactive and kind of being aware of what you're up against will really help you understand to navigate kind of the digital waters that we're up against, okay? And that is all I wanted to cover with you today.